All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Mason from the Gay Gaming Professionals, and today we are celebrating the release of the long-awaited feature film, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. And joining us here at GGP is the director, the creator, the writer, the editor, the producer, and the co-star, Dean Fleischerkamp.
It's nice that the credits haven't changed at all since my home movies I made when I was 8.
Well, that's good. I appreciate the commitment. So thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing great. This is so fun. I mean, yeah, this is the fun part. The hard part's making the movie. The fun part's just telling people about it.
It's been a long journey, I hear. But first question I want to ask you, for someone who's maybe never heard of Marcel the Shell, which she was on, could you just give us an idea of what it's all about?
Marcel is an individual. Marcel is an anthropomorphic shell. It sounds really weird when you describe it to someone who's never seen it before. And when the trailer came out, I loved reading the Twitter reactions from people that were just there to see everything everywhere all at once. And they were like, what is this movie about a Cyclops shell that's making me cry? It is, okay, so Marcel the Shell is a character that I created almost a little over 10 years ago with Jenny Slate, who co-created with me and performs Marcel's voice. This is his big screen debut as a character, as a being with a lot to share. And yeah, that's what I got. I don't know. How'd I do?
That's great. And for everyone who hasn't seen it, it's available on YouTube. There's there's 3 shorts and tie-in books. But here we are at the feature film where we've landed. So you've been involved with this world for over 10 years now, with millions of people falling in love with Marcel's childlike curiosity and humor. So it must have been challenging, I think, figuring out how to turn these 3 to 5 minute shorts into a feature-length film. So what's the origin of the story, and how did you decide to develop this into a film?
Well, the goal was always to make a feature film out of it. I went to film school, and Jenny's also, mostly a film actress. And so when the shorts first took off, it was a very different time, but on the internet. But it took off on YouTube, and immediately there's a lot of interest from studios about wanting to develop it into something, like the next Minions or something. And we kind of did the water bottle tour of. Speaking of water bottles.
Hydrate, please. Yeah.
Thank you. We kind of did we took all those meetings with the bigger studios, but they were all really, it was clear immediately that they just kind of wanted to graft Marcel onto a more familiar tentpole action adventure franchise. One of them suggested that we partner Marcel with John Cena and they fight crime together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Turn him into a Universal Studios ride.
Yeah, exactly. I would still watch that movie, but probably on an airplane. But it just was clear that I wasn't gonna get the chance as a very green new filmmaker to make a film that was holistic and true to the character that we'd invented, and how much he meant to me, and how dear he was to me and Jenny. And so we sort of just said no to most of those things. We made a couple of picture books, and we made a couple of the shorts, but otherwise we were just kind of let's just keep our character ourselves and not blow it out. We don't need to. And eventually we didn't do anything with the character for 3 or 4 years, but the character didn't leave us, and we were constantly kind of just joking around and creating setups and riffs and things. Just as an inside joke between me and Jenny, and eventually those grew into sort of enough of a clear vision that I felt pretty confident we could make a feature out of it. But we both are I think everyone in the world is sick of things that should be short or feature length getting stretched into 10 episode series, and so we really did want to wait until we were sure we weren't doing that just to satisfy a market, but that we were making a movie we believed in that deserved to be a feature-length film.
Yeah, congratulations, because you achieved it, which I think is so difficult to do. Yeah. Oftentimes, yeah, like you said, stretching a story so thin can only take you so far. So like, how did you know this is where you need to take the character of Marcel, who goes on this journey in search of his family?
I think that process of like meeting with the studio execs and kind of feeling disillusioned or disappointed by it was also pretty clarifying, because at first I was definitely trying to do the sort of mental gymnastics of like, okay, so what does a movie look like with John Cena where Marcel's fighting crime? And and at the end of that, you're sort of, when you realize that's like totally stupid and bonkers, then it clarifies you about, well, what is the kind of movie that I would make if I could just do it myself and make the exact thing I want. And I think where my brain went was like, well, how do we look inward? How do we like search near instead of far and not like go big and blow it out? Because Marcel's he's teeny tiny. He lives in this outsized world. There's no reason to like send him off on to Paris. Like, it's already an adventure just for him to get across the living room rug. And so that sort of was the how he cracked it. And we're like, oh, that's what it should be, is that he's sort of like a lone survivor on a desert island, but the desert island is this house that's become an Airbnb.
It really gave it like this purity of like heart to the story and to the character. I really appreciated what you guys turned it into. Did you also know that you would be like integral into the plot of the film, or like how was it like directing yourself and developing your own character?
I hated it. I never I am not an actor, and I like never, well, that's not true. I did act in like high school, but I never wanted to be. After a disastrous performance that I was in of Waiting for Godot in high school went deeply awry, I just was like swore off acting after that, and I got stage fright.
Is there video evidence of this? Or can we? Okay.
A story for another time. I didn't like fall off the stage like Kelsey Grammer, but but so I don't consider myself an actor, and I have not acted in anything since Waiting for Godot in high school. But it was always sort of part of the pitch that my character would be fleshed out more, because he's so present, and it felt like, okay, well, in a short you can get away, like you just hear my voice like laughing a little bit in the short, but you get away with that in a short. You don't really get away with that in a feature, because at some point, no matter how focused you are on Marcel, you're like, who's this guy who's filming him? And so that dovetailed with some of the ideas and themes that we were already working with, and but I didn't plan on actually being on camera until we were working on the story more and actually like shooting, and realized the story sort of demands it.
Well, I appreciate you leaning into it. I also did notice that your character laughs at many of the quips that come out of Marcel's mouth.
Yeah.
Were those honest reactions between you and Jenny Slate, or was there a lot of just improv that was happening between the two of you?
Jenny is like one of the best improvisers, I think, like on the planet. She's so funny and so good. I think probably a minority of them are, I almost don't want to say it, but I do have an incredibly convincing fake laugh.
Well, that makes me concerned about our interview here right now.
See, that was it. I grew up with a brother who was a fledgling stand-up comic, so I honed it over many years.
So were one of like the conversation between the two of you, was there like improv? Was that a lot of improv, or was it?
Oh yeah, totally. So the way I felt like with a bigger budget, there's always the danger that you like sand off the thing that was special about the character. And so I was very focused as a director on preserving, that kind of off the cuff spontaneity. But also we wanted to tell a story that's, it's pretty like emotionally ambitious and big in that way. And you can't really do that without the orchestration and sort of structured storytelling of a real written screenplay. And so we kind of figured out this process where Nick Paley, who co-wrote the film with us, and I would write for a couple of months based on an outline that we had all sussed out together. we would write for a couple of months, and then I would record like 2 or 3 days with Jenny and an audio recording crew and some of our producers, and we would do the scenes, but then we would also be like, I would say like, oh, that line's not really working, or why don't you put that in your own words? And then, or maybe like Jenny would come up with some riff that's just like hilarious. And then when Nick and I would go back to, we both come from an editing background, we met editing on a TV show, we'd go back to another 2 or 3 months of writing, but the first bit of that was us just poring over all this material we'd gotten and figuring out, like, picking out the gems and being like, oh, this works really well, that's really funny. Sometimes like we would have written something that didn't work, but what came from it was better. And then we'd spend another 2 or 3 months like writing, and then we'd do another recording session. So it was this iterative process that I think ultimately resulted in audio that sounds very, authentically real or doc or improvised, but who knows what percentage is real improv and what isn't.
Whatever, like through the cutting room floor, yeah.
Oh my God, there's hours of incredible funny shit, mostly from Jenny, that is on the hard drive.
All right, I look forward to the blooper reel on the
bonus features, yeah.
On the DVD. So obviously there's a lot of stop motion animation involved with this, which is a beast of itself and presents its own challenges and hours upon hours of work. Like, how did you know, or how did you want to get into stop motion animation? Did you continue that for this film, or with the bigger budget, were you allowed to do, cut some corners with some special effects? What was the process of doing that for this?
It was completely different from the shorts, because the shorts were literally just like me in my apartment by myself. And this was a much bigger team. I'm like deeply flattered whenever someone says something like, oh, I thought the movie was just like you and your camera and a small crew, and then the credits rolled and there's 500 people involved in making it. Because it was always the challenge was always like, well, how do we make this in a way more polished, but also not lose the charm of those originals and how kind of lo-fi they are. But I was dedicated to keeping Marcel stop motion because I love stop motion animation, but I actually dislike the way it's used a lot of the time, because I think I'm not going to name any names, but I think it can sometimes, because it's so labor intensive, it can sometimes feel just really like really rigid and not organic at all, and very like breathless and or dead or something. And I wanted to make a movie that embraced sort of the inherent like fallibility of stop motion and how sort of broken it is. Because it is a real like tactile process, and when you're working with a puppet that small, it's like inevitably you'll see thumbprints and glue patches and glops, and those mistakes to me all feel like they give it a more emotional presence and performance. So all the characters are real stop motion except for the bugs, like the ladybug and spiders, those are CG. But it was always like, yeah, CG can emulate the aesthetic of stop motion pretty well. Like a lot of Lego Movie, or maybe all of it was CG, but it can't really, you can't bake into that process mistakes. Like you can't create mistakes that you wouldn't have anticipated.
For a character like that, I think it really it plays well throughout the movie. So another great job to you. But I want to just tell you, one of my favorite quotes in the film is when Marcel asks your character, you want to know why I smile so much? Because it's worth it. Yeah. Which, like, I think just like embodies this warm hug that you feel by the end of the film. Did you specifically have a favorite moment that you shared with Marcel in the movie?
Oh, wow. That's such a great question. There are so many. That's a really great question. I think that the one that pops into mind immediately is are the ones that were not, weren't super scripted, or maybe they came from a moment of like actual spontaneity, but then we wrote around them or something like that. But like, for example, the sequence when like, oh, I don't want to give anything away, but I'm trying to cheer Marcel up, and I'm like, will you sing that song with me? And
Oh
we're trying to duet,
my
and then he
gosh, yeah.
realizes that he realizes I can't sing.
You can't
It's just
sing,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it's just and I really can't. Is so funny because it just really encapsulates our dynamic together, and it was like started. I think we touched it up and wrote a few lines for it here and there, but by and large, that was like an improvised moment where where it just was a great, wonderful improvised moment where it feels like sometimes the thing you or what it expresses to me is like sometimes what being a friend is and what cheering someone up is actually just like being there and being a true, just like dumb, goofy self with them.
Yeah.
It's not, that's like the moment where I cheer Marcel up, but I'm just doing it by I'm not giving him some, monologue about optimism or whatever. It's like existing together.
Yeah, there's so many of those authentic moments. Yeah. So and that's a great one that you shared. Really love that too. We
also,
are running.
I am terrible at singing in my my producer after we recorded that bit came up to me and was like, Dean, I know you say you're not an actor, but like it's kind of hard to sing off key. That was really good. And I was like,
there's no acting.
I'm not in control of my instruments, as they say.
Incredible. All right, so we are running a little low on time, so I just want to ask one last question. What's next for Marcel the show? So we are the Gay Gaming Pros, so could you see him potentially crossing over into games?
Oh man, that would be so fucking exciting. Wow, that'd be so cool. I hadn't considered that, although I know we like had some early discussions about doing like an AR app. But that would rule. Love games. I don't know what a Marcel video game would be like, but it would be very cool if it were like sort of a sandbox type of game where you're like, being with nature. But I would love to do something like that with the right partners. I think I'm excited to look, fingers crossed people go see this movie when it comes out on Friday, and or it's New York and LA on Friday, but then national by July 15th. Hopefully there's a market for that type of thing in the future. The main thing that I'm focused on now is like, we created all these characters that are Marcel's community, some of which have like some of my favorite voice talent attached, like Nathan Fielder, Jesse Klein, Andy Richter, and they're in the movie for 5 seconds. So I'm like, mostly because I was insecure about having to create like 100 characters or whatever, but I love how he fleshed out his world, and hopefully those characters get their own spin-offs.
Yeah, well, I look forward to whatever it is next that happens for Marcel and the entire what do they call it in the film, the clan of
the community.
The community, yeah. So fingers crossed it turns into something even more exciting for you.
Hey, thanks so much, Mason.
Yeah, thank you for joining. What's that?
Do your streamers on Twitch know how beautifully you make your bed?
Are you're calling me out on this right now?
No,
Here, do I need to like?
I mean, is this a real?
Switch here. I'll just switch. There's a little sneak peek of the. All right, that's all. That's all I get though.
Oh, that's all we get.
That's all I get. Okay, but thank you.
Follow him on his OnlyFans where he reveals the rest of his bedroom. All right. Talk to you soon. Thanks, Mason.
Thanks again. Don't forget to catch Marcel the Show with Shoes On, opening this weekend, June 24th, but everywhere. You said July 2nd?
July 15th, I think.
July 15th. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you again for your time, Dean. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Mason.
All right. Bye-bye.